What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Roscoe, and what seems like it's an unofficial Saratoga week, if you will, as all of us are covering some type of Saratoga, but Bettin N Boozin tonight is going to cover the Friday Late Pick 5, including a Grade 3 stake. Welcome, everyone. Thank you guys all so much for joining the show. I greatly appreciate it. And if you do end up enjoying the podcast, please go down below the video player, hit the like button, and hit the subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate it, because not only does that show us that you guys are enjoying the content, but it'll also push this and other podcasts of ours into the YouTube algorithm to hopefully bring like-minded horse players to the HHH Racing Podcast. And of course, for that, we thank you. As I mentioned, it's basically an unofficial Saratoga week, but of course, it is opening weekend at the spa. So to kick off the summer of horse racing, we here at the HHH Racing Podcast have you covered. Last night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern with picks and our Pacific Horseplayers, with Noah, Ryan, and Jackson, covered the opening day card, which is tomorrow, being Thursday's Late Pick 5. We here at 8 p.m. Eastern every single Wednesday for Bettin N Boozin. We are covering the Friday Late Pick 5, and you guessed it, tomorrow 8 p.m. Eastern, Thursday with picks and ponies. Of course, usually it's Howard, Pete, and Paul. I believe Pete is hosting tomorrow as Howard is making his way to Saratoga Racecourse. So keep an eye out for that one, but they will cover the Saturday Late Pick 5. So fantastic week here, especially if you enjoy Saratoga Racecourse. But guys, as I mentioned before, we have podcasts all week. We do this 52 weeks a year. So again, if you guys do enjoy, hit the subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate it, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a podcast that we put up, because we also tend to put up taped podcasts. So a little bit extra for you guys, and you'll only know right away if you hit that notification bell. It's also through all the podcasts posted to YouTube are also posted in audio form to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. So if you're more of an audio listener, please go rate, review, and subscribe over there. TikTok and Instagram at Bettin N Boozin Podcast. I post a lot of short form content over there. Anytime I'm playing horses throughout the day, you will see one posted either to TikTok or Instagram. So follow me over there at Bettin N Boozin Podcast. Of course, the Del Mar and Saratoga Power Picks are still available, guys. You can see the deadlines on the screen right now. It'll be the second weekend, before the second weekend of their respective meet for both Saratoga and Del Mar. Saratoga's will be July 17th for the deadline, and Del Mar's is July 24th. And again, how do you get to those? Go to hhhracingpodcast.com, and you can see right on the screen right now of what you see when you go to hhhracingpodcast.com. You'll see this Power Picks tip sheet right here. You'll see Saratoga and Del Mar. You can also see the combo right there if you want both, and you will get a deal for that. All the FAQs, exactly what you get: price plays, spot plays, ABC grids, top 3 picks, everything you need to be successful every single weekend day of the meets for both Saratoga and Del Mar. We got you covered here on hhhracingpodcast.com. Again, all payment information, all of that is on our website. So please go to that on the screen. Link is also in the description as well. Also, our normal power picks are still available, guys. This will be differing tracks, just like that. If you're subscribing to Saratoga and Del Mar, you will miss Haskell Day, which comes through our normal power picks, because obviously we will not be covering Monmouth on track-specific power picks. This is all done through Patreon, patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. Only $5 a weekend. It's billed $21.60 a month. Again, Patreon bills it all monthly, but $5 a weekend. You get price plays, spot plays, pick 5 grids for 2 separate tracks every single Saturday. Super affordable and as unbiased as possible, guys. They pay for themselves. So please go to patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast for those. You can see we've done it since February of 2021, 885 total picks, and we are still well in the green. So again, you are missing out if you guys are not subscribed to that. Guys, only one person will be joining me tonight, as Patrick has a work event. Of course, he will be deeply missed, but none other. I'm sure there will be a guy that will take the talking for him. Of course, I'm joking, but either way, bringing on from the Ohio State University, Charlie Freeman. Charlie, my friend, look, it's no, and Chelsea and Sugar, of course.
Yeah, we're gonna have 4 people talking tonight.
Yeah, we got at least 3. I'll tell you that much on coming from that screen. But look, Saratoga, man, it's what it's all about, and this is technically, in horse racing terms, it's the kickoff of the summer.
Yeah, no, and like you said, you got to look forward to this. I was already watching some of the other boys' shows, even when I was in Florida, having to, pack late night and get ready to come back home here. But you're right, this is really kind of, I feel like you associate Keeneland with the spring. At least for me, biasly, I associate Gulfstream a lot with the winter time. And then you're right, in the summertime, this is really where Saratoga comes alive. So this is really when the horse racing season starts to pick up again.
It's what it's all about, my friend. And obviously we will get to this shortly. A bunch of people in the chat, but I wanted to give a shout out to every single person that I met in Horseshoe Indianapolis over the weekend. As again, Chelsea wants to interrupt me, but either way, shout out to everyone that came over and met me at Horseshoe Indianapolis. Todd Harmon was a big one. I can see him in the chat right now. I'll bring up his comment. Bert, of course, Greg Boyd was there. Nathan Woodward, thank you very much for the beers, my friend. And everyone else that I saw, anyone I missed, I deeply apologize. And of course, shout out to all my guys, all my friends over in Indianapolis. It was a fantastic time. Even though the betting didn't go our way, we still had a great time and lots of beers were flowing. So shout out to everyone in Indianapolis. But guys, there's a ton of fun to be had tonight. Steve Pogel is here, and let the fun begin. Chris Couples, my friend, thanks so much for joining the show. Terry Frank is here. Katie, of course, is here. Todd Harmon, I enjoyed talking with you and your father at Horseshoe Indianapolis. Hopefully we can talk again in fall at Keeneland. Todd, that would be absolutely fantastic if you can make it out at Keeneland. Always enjoy your company out there for, I believe, the last 3 years we've been going out there. So greatly appreciate it. Both my parents are in the chat. Says, hello, Todd, had a great time. Of course, my dad talking to Todd, and my mom, of course, is here as well. Everyone is in the chat. Of course, guys, if you guys are new here, either on X or on YouTube, bottom right-hand side of the screen, please feel free to comment in the live chat because I know you guys have opinions about the spa. Charlie, let's get right into it here so we don't waste anyone's time as we crack open a nice, cool nectar of the gods, as always. Cheers to everyone out there, and let's get betting. The first race we're going to talk about is the start of Late Pick 5 on Friday, and it's race 6. It's a very, very stout maiden special weight, a mile on the inner turf course for 2-year-old maidens. And I bring up the Equibase right now. Morning line favorite is a pretty lukewarm one at 5-2. The number 3, Dr. Agni for Jose Ortiz and Cherie DeVoe. Second choice, the number 2, Signatory Man, Luis Saez and Brenda Walsh at 3-1. And your third choice is the coupled entry. Shout out to Paul Halloran. I know how much he loves the coupled entries between British Invasion and Honoree, both West Point thoroughbred horses. Miguel Clement trains the 1, Shug McGahee trains the 1A, and the coupled entry is 7-2 on the morning line. Charlie, bringing up our picks to start off the day. We're actually pretty different in this race. I'm going 2-1-3 with the coupled entry in there. You're going against the coupled entry. However, you are going with the morning line favorite. As you know, I don't know if you're trying to play to the host or you actually have a big opinion here, but the number 3, Dr. Annie, Cherie DeVoe, Jose Ortiz.
Yeah, look, I'm not surprised. I don't think you would say you are either, that a race like this where you touched on the lukewarm favorite, but also not only are these babies, they're 2-year-olds, but also, not like a turf sprint or a dirt sprint like we're used to, but going a mile. So I think we both agree these races are pretty open. And I think we talk about this all the time. These are races where you definitely need to look at the workout report and look at the board. But yeah, going into the favorite here with Dr. Agni, for me, what I just keyed in on was a combination of just the consistent work tab, which I really like. Cherie's not normally one who necessarily cranks her horses. She just, tries to work them and get them fit. And this one's had a very steady work tab, so he's going to come in fit. He's got some bullets with that, little over a minute flat with the 47-3. And then the Damn Lady Eli, if you can pull up, she was a nice horse as well. You can obviously see this was all going long on turf. Just ultra consistency, running the Jenny Wiley, the Breeders' Cup, Fillies and Mares turf, you name it, bunch of grade 1s. Was an ultra consistent horse in her own right, 10 for 14, which is, I think, the connections would take it in a heartbeat if they get a horse anything like this. But yeah, I love the damn side. I like the works. Again, I know Cherie's not necessarily known for first time out, but I still like this horse in the spot here. I would want at least 5-2, but makes a lot of sense.
Look, man, my affinity for, of course, Cherie horses, but You did mention it. She does not win first time out very much. She's a 19% trainer in the last 5 years, actually 17%, excuse me. But if you go just first time starters, and again, we graciously sponsored by DRF Gino, and all those guys over there. I can't use another PP service or anything like that.
I'm the same way now.
DRF Formulator has completely ruined us. And the fact that you can get all these stats and stuff like that, DRF does a fantastic job with their formulator product. It couldn't recommend enough. But you can see Cherie DeVoe, first-time starters in the last 5 years, only 25 for 233, only 11% on the win end. And she's, again, you mentioned she's not one to crank her horses early. And the other thing that kind of makes me a little bit interesting is that, and actually, Chris, I'm going to get to that in a second too, but Lady Eli, for how good she was, and then Into Mischief, obviously $250,000 on the stud fee. This horse only gets $185,000 at auction, and I guess no siblings yet. So no siblings have ran yet. So I guess that's the one thing. But man, it's just a little bit red flags for me. Coupled with Cherie doesn't run first time out. I'll tell you what, if this horse runs well, Charlie, this horse will be hammered second time out for me. I promise you that. But little bit too many things, especially, and I know you don't like necessarily the price, which, again, you guys know I don't handicap with morning lines, so I got to put them back up here, so my apologies. 5-2 on the morning line in a race like this that's so open with a lot of talented horses, that's also steering me away. However, I do think Dr. Andy will run very well. I went with the number 2 Signatory Man, guys, and of course we can't show the replay as it is from Churchill, but this horse got squeezed at the gate immediately, was far back in a flat 5 turf sprint. Not what this horse wants to do. Actually ran on really well and actually galloped out really well into second. And I know the boss will love hearing that out of my mouth, but gets a race in. I think that one race at 5 furlongs, I think Brendan Walsh knew that this horse wants a mile the whole way through. Ran very well. However, no one was beating Longshoreman that day. That's a Wesley Ward horse. I know Charlie was keying in on a lot that day. So put now second time out, gets a start under the belt, now comes back to what this horse really wants to do. And I'll tell you what, 10 Sovereigns has had a fantastic start to his young stallion career over in Ireland. You can see on the turf side, 14% sprinting, but 23% on the turf routing side. And if you go progenies, you can see horses like Zulu Kingdom. Mansa Musa is a very good sprinter in his own right. Lush Lips, who just won a couple weekends ago at Churchill Downs. Calispera, a lot of good turf routers in the very young stallion career of 10 Sovereigns. So Signatory Man, second time out. Brendan Walsh also wins at 21% at this type of move. Second time out with 2-year-olds on the turf going longer. So I'm keying in on a lot of different angles here. But again, with these 2-year-old maiden races, you kind of have to get into the weeds a little bit. And that's why I think DRF Formulator is perfect. I promise this wasn't meant to turn into an ad, but can't say the praises enough about it. And I know a lot of people do end up liking some horses in here. We'll go through a bunch of them. Charlie, I want to get your take on why you don't have this coupled entry in here. And again, the price, everything like this. Again, Paul Halloran has ranted about it enough. I'm not a fan of coupled entries. I know you are not either, and we'll get to that one a little bit later. But anything that kind of swayed you away from this coupled entry that I have in second?
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. Honestly, to me, with the breeding, there wasn't anything that jumped out at me enough. Along with the work tab, there just weren't really. Now, granted, I haven't watched any works yet or looked at a workout report, but just, from what we can work with the numbers, there wasn't anything that stood out. And I just feel like anytime in these kinds of races that there's a coupled entry, just naturally with it being firsters, they're going to end up being maybe a little overbet and shorter than they should be. And I get that you're getting 2 in here, but I feel like if there's others I like more that I have interest in, like I even though I don't love the odds on my 3, I'd rather 5-2 than 7-2 on these. I even rather have your 2 horse, honestly, that you have at 3-1 over these. So there just wasn't anything that, jumped at me. And yes, we'll get into coupled entries more for a race, the second to last race that we cover today. But they really frustrate you, especially when it's not the same trainer. It makes even less sense to me.
Yeah, well, they're both West Point horses. You can see it's very cut off, but they're coupled. I just hate it. I mean, again, we've ranted about it enough on this show. Don't need to get into that weeds, but actually, Lopa de Vega does a fantastic, especially with 2-year-old first-time starters. 23% is absolute insanity. 2-year-old first time out. You go turf routers, 18%. If it's wet, it goes even better. I mean, you can Carl Spackler, there's a ton of horses in that progeny as well. And Figure of Beauty, who's the dam, you look 96 there on the dam side. Vergara, who's a very nice long-distance turf horse. Bullseye Beauty was also a stakes winner. So I think there's at least a little bit of breeding to go to. The problem is that I would much rather, have one horse over the other. But of course, if you like them, you get both. Last horse we'll talk about is the number 7 Orbit, Charlie, who you have in second. This is another one with Irish breeding. Doesn't have anyone running yet on the sibling side. However, working like an absolute train in the mornings.
Yeah, that's what I keyed on here. The breeding was pretty decent. By no means anything that I would be concerned about. And yeah, look, like you said, Orbit is just, again, I haven't visually watched it yet, but at least on the work tab from the times we're working with, is working like a monster, very consistent, has a work over the turf already, which I like. And then, yeah, that last work at Saratoga was an absolute bullet. I have a feeling if the workout report ends up being really positive on that last bullet work that we won't get 6-1. But obviously, as of now, that looks very appealing. And then very briefly on the 6, for me, this was simply just, honestly, an angle of just, I like that there's a lot of turf workouts, and I like George Weaver. I think he's becoming underrated. He's been really good. I mean, more, I guess, on the Gulfstream show, and I guess I know a lot of those were shorter, but he's been sort of underrated on these first-time starters. There's been a few times where he's been able to do it, and what's interesting is he pretty much consistently does it when he's at a price. It's not usually when he has one that's taking much money. And also kind of the reverse angle of what you were concerned about with my 3-horse, Twirling Candy only 60,000 fee, and they paid 260. So obviously they must feel pretty good about this one. So it's just another one. Again, you have to watch the board in these kinds of races, but that's how I ended up on the 6th and 3rd.
Exactly. That's how I was going to end it, is that it's actually really nice that this race starts off the late pick 5 so you can see where all the money goes beforehand. So again, lots of good things to kick off the late pick 5. At the end of the day, it's a very, very good betting race, especially if you have a really good opinion over the others. I'm going 2-1-3. Charlie's going 3-7-6 to kick off the late pick 5 on Friday at Saratoga. Guys, moving into race number 7, the second leg of the late pick 5, and it is actually the feature race on the day. It's the Grade 3 Coronation Cup, 5.5 furlongs, and we all know how much I love turf sprints. 175,000 again, 5.5 on the turf. A field of 7 with 3 MTOs, and this will be the only weather report you guys get, because if I do any more than one, the Paul Halloran's going to basically, it's like Beetlejuice. You say it too many times, Paul Halloran's going to, look over my shoulder at some point in here. But the weather is actually shaping up a lot better. It was looking a little bit, iffy early in the week, but it's actually gone down to 50% tomorrow for PM thunderstorms, and now only 15% on Friday. So we should get some good turf racing coming up this weekend at Saratoga. But again, guys, field of 7 with the 3 MTOs. The morning line favorite is number 1, Make Haste, Flavian Pratt, Miguel Clement at 2-1. Second choice, number 3, Clo for Irad and Jose D'Angelo at 5-2. Third choice, number 6, Abiento for Dylan Davis and Mark Cassie. Charlie, yeah, that's kind of the way I thought it was this race too. It's kind of 1-3 and everyone else. Charlie, we both have the first and second choice on top, which of course is nothing creative by any means. However, if you look at the pace scenario and exactly what they've ran in their past couple, they look head and shoulders above the rest in this field.
Yeah, and I know they faced off each other at Gulfstream. These are some Gulfstream horses, so I should know them pretty well here. It's funny. I normally would agree with you in terms of turf sprints. I normally do not like these races at all either, but I actually am really, really high on this one horse. And I understand, right? Like, oh, it's not the creative, right? She's the favorite. She's 2-1. But the reason I'm really keen in on her, and I wish Noah was here because he'd get all worked up and angry because it's one of my favorite angles that I talk about all the time. But Make Haste, last time, that was second time in the U.S. And I talk about this angle all the time, Kyle, how much I hate horses in their first time in the U.S. I always think they need to start. It's always a race you got to wait for. And that's why, if anything, if they do any running that's solid at all, I key in on it. This is one where you look last time overseas, ran against Asterius, Big Mojo, Magnum Force, some pretty big horses in the sprinting side overseas. So had some strength of competition. Obviously, at Gulfstream Speedway, couldn't keep up with Chloe. But then last time out was just incredible. 20-4, 43-2, was doing it easily. Wasn't remotely being asked by Zayed. He didn't make this horse lift a hoof. She just naturally glided away from this field. And I think the stretch out actually will benefit her. Now, third start in the U.S., I just think there's a lot to like here. Gets Pratt as well. And for two horses that are going to be similar prices, I personally much prefer the one over the three.
I agree with you completely. And sorry I had to bring that off, but bringing it back on, I completely agree with you. This will be the first time Miguel Clement brings out this horse. Obviously, no difference to me there. If the one goes, especially Pratt aboard, I mean, it's going to be very hard to catch her, especially on a turf course that's been playing pretty favorably to these types of horses, that especially sprinting, going out for the lead. So if Make Haste makes the lead, granted, she has to go that extra half furlong. However, doesn't look like it'll be any type of issue, especially with the type of running that she did last time. Obviously, much different turf course from Gulfstream coming into Saratoga. However, I full trust in Miguel Clement. I think this horse is going to be very, very good at the right time. Charlie, you mentioned Claude, ran against the 3 back now at this point, in the Melody of Colors Stakes at Gulfstream. Closed out, gone to run some actually really nice races. Was 4-5 favorite in the Senorita down the hill at Santa Anita. Unfortunately, didn't get the job done that day for the connections, but came back in the Source Softly, rained off the turf. Actually, didn't get rained off the turf because it was fast that day. However, didn't win that one either. But the only thing I was hoping that this horse has shown in the past that she can kind of rate a little bit, because there's no way the one doesn't make the lead here. And if Chloe can't, or Chloe, whatever it is, if she can't make the lead, she hasn't really shown the ability to rate and pass off horses. I feel like that's another angle that I might key in on against her.
Yeah, and the other thing that worries me is, again, I do think this one should make the lead, but the one at least showed some ability to rate. If you look at that race, again, the debut in the U.S. was sitting, pretty far back relative for a turf race, and at least made up some ground and was, I think, close for third as well. But you're right, this is one that's really always had to be forward, and if she hasn't made the lead, she hasn't made up places. If you look at, I know she's only had 5 starts, but she hasn't had a start yet where she's actually made up ground.
Mm-hmm.
So that worried me a little too. And again, I know this jockey angle shouldn't matter because you're getting IRAD, but especially for a sprint and for a horse that has to be forward, I personally would prefer Louis. So I'm a little surprised they didn't go back to him. Again, not like IRAD's a bad jockey by any means, and I know this is his track, but I just feel like, if you typically need a horse that's going to have to be aggressive and be forward early, you'd have Louis. But I agree with you. My main concern is not that. My main concern is definitely what you were saying, is that this seems to be one that struggles to pass. And I don't know if this one's going to be able to get the lead. But again, based on ability, I think these two are, like you said, pretty clearly above the rest, and it's likely one of these. And then moving into the 6, look, with the way the turf is playing, probably not ideal for this one. But this is one for Cassie that they had big expectations for. Gets Dylan Davis back aboard. This is one that flew from the clouds in the Matron to win a Grade 3. Obviously, that was going 6, and then they tried to stretch all the way out against Lake Victoria and others. Wow. And obviously, that was just too far and didn't work. Yeah. Then comes back to Keeneland. Again, flies from the clouds, but couldn't get there in time. And then last time, just never really had a chance. It was interesting because they tried to have her sit a little bit closer, and it just didn't work. So I feel like the struggle with this one is, I think she actually, on ability could be as good as the 1 or 3. But I think with the way the track's playing, with this being at 5.5 and not 6, I just can't see her getting there up in time for more than a piece. And I think based off last time where they tried to have her sit a little closer and it didn't work at all, I think they know they're just going to have to live with the results of flying from the clouds and knowing that likely, because this isn't 6, that she's just not going to quite get there in time.
Not only that, Charlie, there's no pace in this race. It's literally the 1 and 3 around the track, at least in theory. So with all those
weird for a turf sprint.
Well, yeah, exactly. And with all those red coded numbers on Ambiento's sheet, you would imagine she needs some type of pace scenario to be able to close in. That's why I went with Gata Brazil instead, just because I think that she'll be in front of a horse like Ambiento. And if there's other horses that might just fade away off that last race in the Stormy Blues at Laurel, granted, Brittany Russell always runs her horses up at Laurel, but loves to take shots in this race. However, Gata Brazil is cross-entered in Monmouth, so keep an eye. However, she did work over the Saratoga, over the Oklahoma turf last time out, and actually worked in 45 and 3. So that should tell you how fast that turf is out in New York right now, but we'll see where she ends up going. I wouldn't imagine she wouldn't go here. And if she sits in front of Abiento, I really do like Gata Brazil to at least catch a piece in this race. And Chris Couples agrees as well a bit, got over the Saratoga turf like a deer. I don't, racing Twitter, that deer has been a touchy subject as of recently when, or that was a harness race, of course, but still, it's still a good way to bring it up. And why have a deer when you can have a beer? This is one of my favorite shirts. I love this shirt. It's just a bear with deer antlers, but a bear and a deer, it's a beer, dude. Of course it's a beer. And speaking of beer, cheers to everyone out there. But all right, that's my teacher joke for the day. I'm going 1-3-7. Charlie's going 1-3-6 in race number 7. Guys, moving on to race number 8, which is easily the most wide open race of the entire day. It's a maiden 50 claimer for 6.5 furlongs on the dirt for 3-year-olds and older, going with another coupled entry in this race, but technically a field of 9, with the morning line favorite being the number 7, Gallo de Fuego, for Irad Ortiz and Dale Romans at 3-1. Second choice is shared between the number 4, Dark Devil, and the number 8, World Fair, and your third choice at 4-1 is number 3, Munson, for Jose and Tom Amos. Bringing up our picks right now, I am going with the number 8, World Fair. Charlie, you are going with the potential morning line favorite, the number 7, Gallo de Fuego. So what did you like about him in this race?
Yeah, look, these races are, like you said, this race in particular is very tough. This is probably the most wide open race in the sequence, and I wish it was because everybody's that good, but I don't think that's the reality. Look, obviously the concern is going to be that he's 0 for 9, but here's what I personally like. This is third off the layoff now. I like that after, at 17-1, he ran a close fourth in a hot pace and gets a cutback. Then they give him the cutback, but had enough confidence to move him all the way back up to maiden special weight for 92,000, a big jump up. And yet, despite that, he was a shorter price in that race. And yeah, I get it. He only ran 6th and lost by 7 lengths, but he's going to be forward in a race where I do think it's going to be important to stay forward. He's getting to the right distance where maybe trying to be forward and, those true sprinters at 6 was a little too short. And maybe at 7, he just couldn't quite get it. So maybe this is the distance that just gets him right. And if you look at his career, and that 6 to 7-ish range are when his better races are, and when they've had him go longer has been his weakest efforts, and gets a big jockey upgrade in picking up Irad Ortiz, which I think is important too that he chose to get on this one. So I just think there's a lot that makes sense with this one. Again, this race is wide open. I would not want 3-1 on any horse in this race, to be honest. But again, you have to land on someone. And like you keyed it on, when we handicapped at the time, we didn't have morning lines, which I know Noah's going to crucify me for, because I've just realized I think I have all 5 favorites, which is just awful to see. But it's not my fault. The morning lines are based off who I pick on top. But you have to pick somebody, and I landed on the 7.
Yeah, I mean, look, and there's a couple of people in this chat that love the 7 between Terry Frank and Chris Couples. Chris says he only needs the 7. Again, I agree with him that he thinks people are spread, and if you can get a 3-1 single in a race like this, I mean, that's huge equity in terms of playing horizontally. In terms of numbers, Charlie, that 71 last time is really, really good. It's just a matter of, I mean, this horse really hasn't done anything. Granted, no one in this field really has, but I mean, it's 2 for 9 in the money. This horse has been bouncing between 50, claimers to restricted special weights, because the horse only sold for 40,000 in October of 23. So bouncing back and forth for Dale Romans obviously picks up Irad, so that is a huge bump. However, I can't trust this. This horse is just basically as inconsistent as they come. And if probably main claiming is definitely where this horse wants to be. However, I wanted to go at least elsewhere in terms of consistency, and that's why I landed on number 8, World Fair. Am I happy about it? No. All these horses stink. I mean, well, 0 for 12. However, last 2 races have been very good. Yeah. Definitely not as fast as the 7, according to Bayer time form standpoint, or Bayer form standpoint, excuse me. Time form, though, I mean, it's not far back at all. 98, 2 back for World Fair, 89 last time, 91. Gallo de Fuego's last races were 95, 96. So this horse is right there. And actually, funny enough, we talk about comparing time form and Bayers all the time. And 95 is actually worse from time form than the last one. But if you look at Bayer, I think it's 6 points higher on the Bayer scale. Yeah, it's 8 points, 63 and 71. So time form obviously has that last race weighted rated way lower than Beyer does. However, obviously we'll see what comes of it. Ron Marquette does very well at this type of configuration. Pratt hops aboard from Rafael Bejarano again. I really like Bejarano in terms of, lower tier tracks. However, Flavian Pratt's an obvious upgrade there. And if he can sit either on the lead or just right off a horse like a horse or someone we're going to talk about here in a second, I think World Fair might just sit the perfect trip. And, like you said, you got to try and find some type of angle in a race like this. And I landed with the angle of Charlie, where at these lower levels, a lot of horses don't like to pass, and you can go through these horses, not a whole lot of passing getting done. So if World Fair can get out to the front, that's going to be my angle into this one. Underneath, Charlie, you have the 8, but you also have the number 2 in here. Sounds like fun. Again, 0 for 11. However, Beyer numbers, ran 76 3-back, even though on the turf, the 73 and 67 fit in here.
Yeah, the big thing I keyed on, Kyle, was kind of the reverse angle of what you were talking about. I picked 2 horses that are going to be pretty forwardly placed, most likely in the 7 and 8. That are going to try to hold them off because these horses aren't very good and can't pass. And the reason I ended up with the 2 on third is I was looking through trying to find anybody that could pass, and the 2 can pass. You do have to give credit to that on a serious note. You look in this horse's career, you look at the dirt race that you were keying in on, and yeah, I guess we're sitting off and couldn't go by, but still got up for second. You look at the turf race, 2-back was 10th by almost 7 lengths and got within a neck. So at least there's something here to work with where you can say this horse has shown the ability to at least go by other horses, which again, when you get to these wide open, low level races, that actually means something. Yep. And I also do have to give credit. They only paid $10,000 for this horse. So at least unlike some of these others, not a complete, underachiever. And they had the confidence to throw this one into plenty of unrestricted maiden special weight races that seemed clearly overmatched for this one. And I didn't necessarily perform in a lot of them. But the fact that they had that kind of confidence means at least they think that they're seeing something, and gets Castellano, who I like, gets him back aboard, who this horse had the 2 best efforts.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you by any means. But again, even though there is passing done, there's not a whole lot of it. So relatively, of course, yes, allegedly. But that's why I went with the 3, because the 3 is the horse that showed ability to pass, and actually pretty decent ability to pass last year as a 2-year-old. Ran in the main special weights. This is the first drop for this horse, which is something I like. Came off the layoff, didn't run very well. Obviously, Tom Amoss thinks that this is where the horse belongs and can win, which is something I like about Tom Amoss. He always puts his horses in races that they can win. This is also the first time out after the ultimate equipment change, so that could be a very good key in on. I could even put this horse on top, honestly. Being so lightly raced, first time off the layoff at 3 years old, can definitely take a step forward, and with the ultimate equipment change. So there's a whole bit, it's basically a whole new look for this horse. So Munson is definitely one I would key in on. And I have Dark Devil in third for the sole fact of going to sit a lot closer than other horses in this race. Back at Aqueduct going a mile, this horse showed the ability to actually have some nice tactical speed, which I really liked. Then you're going from Ruben Silveira and Ricardo Santana to Luis Saez. So lots of things to like about the 4. Obviously going to have to improve a little bit or get back to those numbers that he ran early in his career through his 3-year-old year. Even if he runs that 77 or 73, 72, any of it, definitely puts him in contention for the win. So I have number 4, Dark Devil, in third. I want to shout out a couple people before we move on. Travis Diaz, my friend. I'm at work, just dropping in to say hi. Good luck. Let's cash some tickets at Saratoga. Travis, I don't think I've seen your name before, so welcome in, my friend. Thanks so much for tuning in, and good luck this weekend at Saratoga. Hopefully you come back and watch the rest when you're not at work, or hopefully we're at least keeping you entertained while work is a little bit slow. And of course, Ray Cromley, thanks for all the support over the years, and welcome in. Thanks so much for joining the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. And race 8, I'm going 8-3-4, and Charlie's going 7-8-2. Guys, moving into race number 9, the penultimate leg of the late pick 5. It's an allowance optional 45,000 going a mile on the inner turf. The field is set for technically 12 horses. However, we got the couples again, guys, and we got 2 of them. And the one of the couples is very, very heavy favoritism, I should say, between the number 1 Rhetorical and the number 1A set at 1-2 on the morning line. Second choice all the way to number 9 Laurel Valley at 6-1 for Pratt and Maker. And the number 5, Slap in the Face, is your third choice at 8-1, Manny Franco and Anthony Dutrow. And I'll tell you what, Charlie, you can actually see it by my when I go to my DRF, you'll see like my top choices in there. I was trying so hard to find something to beat these horses. The problem is, Charlie, is that when I see, a lot of times when you see these couples, you're like, okay, one horse is good and the other horse is not, not the best, but you really like one of them. However, your price is destroyed because people see the two horses and they love to bet the sets. No pun intended, of course, with set in there. However, they're the two best horses in the race and they're coupled. Yeah. So it really doesn't make good in terms of a value standpoint.
No, and it's not great when I saw Rhetorical, and before I saw that it was a couple entry, immediately wrote irresponsible wager and irresponsible double into the next race, and how excited I was to bet this horse back. And the immediate thought I had is, the only way I really see this one losing is if someone just gets loose enough on the lead and already has the jump. And I was like, Set, who's a horse that has always been pretty aggressive in those mile races, and then, has even tried some sprinting races as more of a closer, is maybe the one to do it. And then I put 2 and 2 together. And when you were texting about it to get ready, realized they were coupled. And not such a good situation when you see a monster like Rhetorical and see the only other horse that remotely has the figures or style to beat this horse is actually joint with this one. So when you have the clear-cut top 2, kind of like that 1-3 race in the turf sprint, but they're one entry, no bueno for value. No bueno.
No bueno indeed. Look, I mean, there's nothing too much to say about Rhetorical, right?
It should be 3 for 3, by the way.
And that was
completely didn't break, which killed me in that race.
And obviously, you see where this horse likes to sit. Then you look back at 11th, and you're like, "Well, that's not good." He actually rallied really, really well. This will be second time off the layoff for Rhetorical, and if this horse does any type of running like he has in the past, it's going to be very tough. And this is a half to Sterling Silver as well, still running nowadays, but has been. She was very, very good for a long time, and technically still is, because she ran a 94, getting second in the Critical Eye, and ran second in the Ruffian behind Jody's Pride. So lots of things to like about Rhetorical. And again, Charlie, part of the couple, you go all the way to the outside, who's technically in the 12 hole. The 1 is in the 3 hole, and the 1A is in the 12 hole. Got that, everyone? Okay, cool. There's going to be a pop quiz at the end of this. Set. Mark Cassidy, Dylan Davis, again, they're both Eclipse horses, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. This is also second off the layoff, and he also ran huge last time. This second off the layoff, you'd imagine it can only get better.
Yeah, and that was, again, going shorter than he normally likes. Also was sitting off a leader who got reasonable fractions. And honestly, I remember watching that race thinking, that leader, who's a nice horse in his own right, was going to win for fun. And then Set just was not having it and did everything in his power. And honestly, he just didn't get the bob. He ran the better race in that race. Now, I do remember I played a straight exacta this way, so I wasn't upset about it. But deep down, I knew Set should have won that race. But you're right, that was first off a layoff and trying to do it against sprinters, where, again, this horse is fast in his own right, but not sprinter speed fast. He's fast for, these miler horses. So to come back and run a career best buyer off that big of a layoff just kind of shows you what you're working with. And yeah, this is my big fear. The problem is Set's going to have the jump on him. And I do think Rhetorical gets him, because I do think Rhetorical is the best horse in the race. But I think with Rhetorical's ability, the only way you're beating him is if you get the jump on him. And now I do have the 9 in second, and so do you, because with the way the track's playing and with the ability the 9 has, and with the being Pratt, there is something to like. Don't get me wrong. And if somebody in the chat was like, I landed on the 9 on top, I want to beat the 1 and 2 horses, I'm not going to talk you off of it, because I think this is the horse to beat them. The problem is I just think no one is going to be able to close and go by either of the coupled entries. So it really is, you just got to hope the 9 is able to have a Pratt masterclass and wire the field. But I mean, this just feels like the most painfully boring and obvious single that it's going to be the couple. And it sucks, because I think you could honestly have been bold in this race and picked one of Set or Rhetorical and singled and been bold and probably still got it right. And now you have to have both.
Yeah, and that obviously only kills the value. I actually had both Laurel Valley and the 5 that both Chris Walsh and Chris Couples like in the chat on top at some point, and I just couldn't get over the fact that, again, if Set goes out to the lead, Rhetorical's going to sit right behind and probably wins for fun. In terms of with Set to his outside, I really don't think his horse has a chance to win necessarily. While I still think the talent is there, this is going to be first off the layoff at 5. Mike Maker doesn't exactly do the best off of these types of layoffs. So while I think Laurel Valley can get a little bit of a piece I think on the win end, it's going to be very tough from both a layoff standpoint and a trip standpoint with Set breathing down his neck the entire way around the track. But wanted to have the 9 in there to at least catch a piece. The only other horse I want to talk about in this race, and again, this is a wide open race, so many different ways you can go, is the number 5, Slap in the Face. And again, if Rhetorical loses, it will be that. This horse has ran very well at Saratoga. And the thing I like about him, Charlie, is there's a lot of tactical speed here. So he could sit, either right next to or right behind Rhetorical. And if this one improves, I mean, really, realistically, second off another long layoff, this is the only one I can make a case for winning the race.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hear that. I see what people are saying in the chat, and I see the vision. I think this one is going to have to sit off the 9 and sit off the couple of entry. My concern personally watching him is, yes, look, the reason I put him in third is because, like you said, he loves it here at Saratoga. Now, he hasn't won yet, but he's 3 seconds in a row. He's also just an ultra-consistent horse, 8 of 11 starts in the money. My personal issue, and look, maybe second off the layoff, he shows enough of what you and some in the chat are envisioning. My issue is visually, he sort of matches what his figures say. He just sort of runs the same tactical race, and visually to me just doesn't look like one that's ever been improving. He just looks like the same horse over and over again. Now, look, that's not a bad horse by any means. He doesn't. The flip side you get with it is you're going to get consistency, and I certainly think this is one I would play in exactas if you can get any sort of value underneath the couple entry. But I just, at least with the 9, I was at least, and again, I hear you with the layoff concerns, but at least I was seeing progression in buyers and visually where I was like, you know what? It's not impossible that this one takes a step forward. Again, second off the left, you could be right here again, and we'll have to wait and see. And I guess the counterpoint you could make is to run an 80 off that layoff means he could be ready to step back to already be in form. But I just would need to see it again first before putting that one on top.
I do understand, and that's why I probably could change him to second, which I might do, because this year I'm hoping to post almost every single day for Saratoga on X. I post my selections every single day that I play over on my X at AP Roscoe K. I might end up switching this horse to second, but again, this is just one that you meant. We realistically have seen exactly what he is. I do like the blinkers off because I think last time he got a little keen when he was drawn to the on the 1 hole. So now gets drawn back a little bit more outside to the 5, which I like a lot more. And again, this is just the only one I could make a case that if there was someone to upset Rhetorical or the coupled entry for that matter, it would be the number 5, Slap in the Face. There's just a lot of different ways you can go in a lot of these races. However, I don't think this is the one to try and take a chance, at least in my opinion. Both Charlie and I are going 1-9-5 in race number 9 on Friday. And the last race we're going to talk about, guys, is race number 10. It's a 1.16 optional claimer for 100,000. As I bring up the Equibase right now, it's going 1.16 on the turf with a full field of 12. And this is a fantastic betting race. But the morning line favorite is a decently heavy favorite. The number 2, Asbury Park, for Flavian Pratt, Chad Brown at 2-1. Second choice is the number 12, King of Ashes, a horse that I know Charlie is very fond of. Irad Ortiz hops on for Brendan Walsh. Third choice is the number 11, Straight Cash, for Jose Ortiz and Cherie DeVoe. And I'll bring up our picks right now. Charlie, you are going 5 for 5, my friend. Asbury Park at 2-1. I'm going with the number 11, Straight Cash. Charlie, obviously this horse is very, very good. Last time out at Saratoga on Belmont Stakes Day, I believe, at least Belmont Stakes weekend for sure. Ran an absolutely great race in a pretty loaded field. Tom Collins came back to win out of that race. So I'll bring up the replay. I'll let you talk through it. What'd you like most about Asbury Park?
Yeah, I have to give Howard credit on this one because he had told me over and over again, headed into that second start, how much I needed to rewatch that replay on Asbury Park. And he said, especially for someone like me who he knows I love my closers and gallop outs, to watch how that horse ran, watch the trouble, watch how long it took him to figure out what he was doing and get going, and then watch his gallop out. And I was like, you know what, Howard, you might be right. We might have a monster here. But like you said, the field he was going into looked pretty decent. But then when you see the price he went off at, clearly the public thought that much of him. And then, yeah, again, one that's going to be from off the pace and take some time to get rolling. But once he did, I mean, Pratt just looked so confident on him. Yeah, used the whip a couple times, but really just hand rode him out and was just much the best in this field. And I just have a feeling as long as Pratt has him sit close enough here, I think he's just going to do it again. And I do think there's enough pace in here for it to set up for him anyway. I just think second time off the layoff as well. I just think he's going to be one that gets better and better, and is going to be one that we end up seeing in some graded stakes on the turf down the line that, you know, people start to consistently remember this name and know you have to look out for. And for a field that actually has as decent enough talent in this one and this many horses, 2-1 sounds really short, but honestly, I think it's deserved.
I mean, it's definitely deserved. I mean, that last race, you guys all watched it with us there. This is going to be second off the layoff. My problem is, Charlie's, like I said, is he's pretty far back. In that last race, they went pretty quick up front, and time form rated 106. So honestly, not the greatest time form. I thought it could have been a little bit more just based on how we ended up visually winning that race. But I know you and I are both visual handicappers, and he ended up looking fantastic in that race. The breeding suggests this horse can run all day long. But again, I think that this horse might need a little bit of pace in front. And while I think there's enough, it might be, this is one of those that, if he succumbs to someone getting the jump on him, I wouldn't be surprised. And that's actually what I'm hoping for with the number 11 Straight Cash. And I understand how everyone's going to come at my throat about this West Coast horse, blah, 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 running on the turf out there at 6 furlongs. Now it's going to try and run with the big boys at Saratoga. Now, but Sharitovo, first time out, it was a field of 5. However, this horse ran a fantastic race and sat really close sprinting, which means this horse is definitely going to be pretty close. You're looking at the number 7, was actually bet way down on debut. 2-5, got Pratt aboard, Richard Baltus. Again, set a really nice trip. However, visually looking at this, I mean, shakes the reins. Pratt gets outside, doesn't go to the whip at all. It's just a straight hand ride, pulls the whip out there, but it's all hand ride. Hits her once there, but all the way in, coasting and winds going away. If this one sits a tactical trip and is going to have to work out a trip from that outside gate, got an 83 buyer and a 104 time form first time out. Now this will be second time out for Cherie, or first time out for Cherie, but second time out for this horse. Picks up Jose Ortiz. I really like this horse to sit at least a little bit in front. I could be completely wrong. Asbury Park could be an absolute monster, but I'm willing to take a chance, and I feel like I'm going to get paid for it to take a chance. Morning line 6-1 right now. I think you'll get at least 5 on the day with Asbury Park in this race. And the horse we're going to talk about here in the number 12, King of Ashes. Charlie, the horse you have in second. Again, I know you've had an affinity for this one. Unfortunately, hasn't worked out either one of the times on very close margins. However, going to try and take another chance with him in this race in second.
Yeah, well, the funny part is actually the only time I actually have bet on him were his first 3 starts of his career.
That's true.
I didn't play him at Keeneland or Churchill, and he almost beat me twice. I had World Beater in that race, so I was sweating a little bit. And I had Early Adopters, a single and a Keeneland Turf Pick 3 that I hit. And I was almost saying, there's no way my horse King of Ashes at a big price of all horses is the one that's going to knock me out. I think he's been incredibly impressive and is actually starting to live up to the hype that I probably gave him too soon. I mean, again, this is a horse who was nearly 17-1 against Early Adopter, who I get, didn't do much running, but it's been running against much tougher and graded, in grade 1 and grade 2 stakes races, and nearly won that race. Then goes on a cutback to what I think is more realistic for him. I think he's one that wants a mile and 16th and a mile and an 8th. I don't think he wants anything to do with that distance, and yet almost pulled it off. But anyway, nearly held off World Beater, who's a horse that was, had been in terrific form and was a horse Noah like that switched to turf and then seemingly figured it all out as soon as switched into turf. Has just been incredibly consistent. And yeah, ran a nice second at a price against test score. So, the form is certainly flattering, and it looks like it's not like he just won it, almost won at a big price because they saw it. He didn't run against anything. He's been running against tough competition. It's working for it. And I actually like Irad hopping aboard because I have a feeling with this outside post, Irad's going to be a little more aggressive with him and make him sit a little closer than he normally would for this distance and maybe try to get him to do more like what he did at his last race and be, third or fourth. And, he will likely get he obviously will be behind 11. But I think to make sure he's not hung out too wide, he's certainly going to be ahead of the 2. He'll be mid-pack. And if they go quick enough, he's going to get the first jump. So for me, this would be the alternate that I would turn to, trying to put the past bias aside. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And look, if he sits a good trip, he's definitely going to be a threat in this race. Just a matter of trying to work something out from that 12. Obviously, I have the same problem trying to fix one out with the 11. The only other horses we have, Charlie, you have the number 9 Super Times at 8-1. I have the number 7 also at 8-1 and Fond Farewell. Real quick, last thoughts, and then we'll move into best bets.
Yeah, so 2 quick thoughts here. With Super Times, again, I just like that this one's going to be pretty forward. And I thought the debut was incredibly impressive on the turf at Gulfstream. I don't really know why they switched to dirt. I don't know if it was, some DFS at all, just based off who the horses were running. But then again, at the timeline, it probably wasn't. But look, I trust Cassie, so maybe he thought there was something there on dirt. But just even though the efforts were fine, I mean, look, losing to Grande and River Thames is nothing to be embarrassed about. But I just think visually looks better on turf. So I like that this one's going to be forward and get a nice trip. This is another one, and as a bullet work, this is one I'd absolutely be using underneath. And I saw a lot of people in the chat talking about the 5 Assertiveness, who is the horse I almost put in third. And I do agree. I think this one is also super interesting. It is another one that's going to be forward. The only slight concern I have is I don't think he has as much upside as some of these others. I feel like we already know what he's going to be, but you'll get a square price. And if you're going to use a horse with, Pletcher and Franco underneath, I'm not at 10-1. I'm not going to talk anyone off that horse. So I think it makes sense underneath for sure.
Yeah, look, I completely agree. There's a lot of different ways you can go, especially underneath, and especially if you don't like the number 2 on top in this race, Asbury Park. Fond Farewell, I thought the debut was very, very good at 5.5. This is out of an Uncle Mo mare for Caravaggio. Distance should be no worries to this. Gets Luis Saez aboard, and again, is working pretty decently for Will Walden, who's had a very nice coming out party in 2025. So, Fond Farewell, same type of thing, is going to be running with Asbury Park late, but if he gets a piece towards the end, I would not be surprised at all. In the last race of the late pick 5 on Friday, I'm going 11-2-7. Charlie's going 2-12-9. Charlie, moving into best bets here. And of course, before we do, thank you guys all very much for all the support recently on our podcast. And tonight we've had a very nice both chat interaction and audience the whole time. Again, if you are enjoying the show, we ask that you please go down below the video player here on YouTube, hit the like button and subscribe button, but mainly hit the like button because it shows us that you guys are enjoying the content we're putting out. And of course, for that, we thank you. Charlie, 2 doubles for you today, my friend, going with race number 6, 3-7 into singling the 1, going Dr. Agni and the number 7 Orbit, singling the number 1 in race 7, that is Make Haste. And I mentioned the ice cold double 1 with 2. That's the coupled entry into Asbury Park. Definitely won't get too much on that double. However, if both favorites run like they should, could just be a nice 5-1, and everyone loves a nice 5-1 winner.
Yeah, look, in the first double, I think I'm honestly going to get value no matter who I use, because you have 2 very unpredictable races where you have, 2-year-olds and then, first-time starters and then a turf sprint. But we talked about the 3. I really like the breeding. I think the concerns you brought up are valid with, some of Sheree stats and the price tag they paid, but I'm not going to overlook the dam or the workout tab. And also, we didn't even mention that, Jose's aboard and he's been on fire lately, so that doesn't hurt.
Yep.
And then also using the 7, who we talked about, is the 1 Orbit, who had those bullet work tabs and also some decent breeding for Cassie. So I'm going to use those 2 primarily into the 1 where with Make Haste, we talk about this. I love horses after, second and third time out in the U.S. I always talk about I don't like the first in the U.S. angle. Seems to be rapidly improving. Gets Pratt. Should be able to clear from the rail and not look back from there. So a rare turf sprint race where I have a strong opinion. I'm going to do something with it. We talked about how wide open race 8 is. So for me, you could even use kind of what I'm doing here in these doubles to get an idea that if I play a pick 5 ticket, it's going to be fairly skinny. And I'll be hoping in race 8 maybe that we're both wrong and it's not the chalk and there's a bomb. And then, in races 9 and 10, look, the coupled entry hurts because I wanted to just single rhetorical and just do rhetorical in Asbury Park as a double before I knew about the coupled entry. But you just have to live with it. And then again, I know with Asbury Park, the concern is going to be obviously, with the cutback. With the setup as a dead closer is going to be a little tough. But I think these are the 2 most talented horses that we're covering in this sequence. And honestly, if I can get at least 3 or 4 to 1, as much as I don't love that for a double, it still is value. And look, we talk about this. Matt Miller teaches this all the time. If you can just play one of those big bets, you put 20, 30 bucks on this can just clear you for a day. You don't have to play all these races and get overly creative.
Nope. And you got, like I said, you just need one good bet all day. And as long as it's your best opinion, you're hitting it well. That's what it's all about. Charlie, good luck with your best bets. 2 win bets for me. Easy and simple. At the start of the pick 5 and the end of the pick 5. Number 2, Signatory Man, is the horse in the race 6 main special weight who already ran at 5 furlongs at Churchill on June 20th. Ran a closing 4th and had a really nice gallop out 10 Sovereigns. The sires had a fantastic start to his stallion career, as I mentioned. So 3-1 on Signatory Man will definitely be enough for me to take a chance in a 2-year-old race with a lot of loaded horses in there. And one we didn't even talk about, good friend Siggy Mendoza put it in the chat. The number 5, Epic Desire, is a full to Dare Manor. So just an absolutely loaded main special weight in race number 6. But I'm going to go with the horse that's ran already, had a little bit of experience in number 2, Signatory Man. And then the last race, the number 11, Straight Cash, first time out for Cherie DeVoe. Hopes to get a nice stalking trip, get the jump on horses like Asbury Park at a nice price of 6-1. Everyone, thank you guys all so much for watching. Charlie, of course, thank you as well. Fantastic viewership all the way through. We greatly appreciate all the support. And look, it's the start of the summer, everyone. Saratoga's kicking off, and it's not leaving for a long while. So everyone strap in, get yourselves ready. But of course, next week we got Haskell week. It's just really kicking off the start of the summer. So thank you guys all so much for watching. All of it, all of the support, we greatly appreciate it. For my co-host, Charlie Freeman, I've been your host, Kyle Roscoe, in episode 138 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast, covering the late pick 5 on Friday, July 11th, including the Grade 3 Commonwealth Stakes. And until next time, everyone, crush those bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good night.